Hello, this is Brother Kevin. I would like to welcome you to Reformation and Revival Now. We're in our last section and we're talking about the spiritual weapon of vision. And I know you don't think about vision as a weapon, but it really is. And I want to share with you on our series, our 103 series, some experiences that I had in this area. So let me get right into it. During the years of the Stand in the Gap March in the kind of really in the mid 90s, I became a part of a prayer team, which I'll leave nameless. We were joined together by the call of God to take our community for Christ. God gave the leaders a vision, and many intercessors believed in this vision. This vision came to us after the march in D.C. It was to pray across denominational lines, turn from our present apathy, and reach our communities for Christ. We began to pray 2 or 3 times a week in line with that corporate vision. As we continued to pray, the Lord opened doors for us in the Northern Virginia area. Great things began to happen. Opportunities began to unite different prayer teams around the area. Community outreaches began to spring up. Different things that caused people to come in contact with the gospel. In fact, one of the ladies in that Jesus Day 2000, in fact, that's when we were doing the Jesus Day 2000, something that hadn't happened in 60 years. Two things. This lady, the sister, put up a placard over the city, Jesus Day 2000, advertising something for Jesus Christ in a particular city that was outrageously against Christendom. But it happened because of intercession. As I said, opportunities came to unite prayer teams. Where there was a laws against the preaching of the gospel in the street, God began to overrule these laws, and the word of God went forth. And I was one of those preachers that went forth preaching when nobody had preached for 60 years, preaching storefront style in this major city in front of a transformer. And I would get 60 calls a day of somebody inquiring, what is this crazy man doing? I would get people that were my regulars who would drive slow, bus drivers driving slow to hear the preaching of the gospel. My wife began the outreach work that many of the things she's doing right now happened during this time. Outreaches began to happen. My wife began to feed over 300 families supernaturally. God began to establish food bank ministries with my wife, and she began to have access. And my wife and I began to move into the Latino community. It was absolutely incredible what God did through United Prayer. Now, I really wanted to share this because this is what I'm talking about. If everything I've said up until this point didn't lead to this, I'm going to tell you, this is personal experience here. Me and another pastor, another brother who I greatly love, we prayed together, and we were praying before the Stand in the Gap March. And when this prayer team formed, I became a part of that prayer team, which began to unite a lot of hearts together. But we began to pray in the Spirit, and we began to see as we unified to the vision that God gave us. Now, I want to be very clear. After the Stand in the Gap March, God moved so mightily just for us to have a Christian march. But we said, this is what the leader said, and she was a woman, by the way. Those of you who don't like women in ministry, this was a woman, and she was a godly woman and a natural born leader. But she said, what are we going to do to continue what we heard at the Stand in the Gap March? What does God want to do? I'm sorry, forgive me, just saw an insect. And then we all prayed, and God began to give some of us, but really gave her husband, the framework of what we would begin to pray for. And God began to do some wonderful things in the city. And as I said to you before, many of the things my wife and I are doing today came out of that period. And a lot of the things I've learned that I'm sharing with you now came out of that period. It was one of the most incredible periods of my life. I, of course, am called to the preaching ministry, had 3 years of preaching on the street corner. Yes, I had some persecution, but every time persecutors were sent, usually in the form of police officers, threatening to arrest me, trapping my car, pinning me in. But when I would just preach to them the love of Jesus Christ and tell them Jesus is the only way you can be saved, that sometimes they fall back. I mean, spiritual power was released. One man took off his hat and started crying and saying, I need to get back to God. These are the type of things that happen when you have united people in intercession. Okay, so I wanted to share this little section with you to let you know that being united to a powerful vision is amazing. Now, I want you to know how Satan was put down in this. First came the vision. We sat there and said, what are we going to do now that the Stand in the Gap March is over? And then the leader said, this is what God is showing me we should do. And when we begin to comprise that and put it in a form of really a small pamphlet of what our vision statement would be as a prayer ministry, we begin to pray on it, stand on it, and act in it. In other words, we confessed it, we prayed it, and we moved in it. We begin to see doors open. Now, let me share with you something about the prophetic. We would often praise and worship in our meetings, not very lengthy, but we would praise and worship. As we begin to worship, God began to tell one of the ladies, I see a man walking down within the valley of a city, and he has a big bullhorn, and he is preaching out loud the gospel. Now, while this is going on, God is dealing with me about a preaching assignment in a little valley, okay, to preach open air. And I've been looking at that little spot God told me to preach for about a month or so, maybe more. And when this prophetic utterance came in the prayer meeting, I knew that God had spoken to me, and God gave me a 3-year assignment of preaching the gospel in that city with results. Now, I'm telling you, now that's a powerful prayer meeting. There were all sorts of things that happened during that time. And the leader of that prayer group began to unite prayer teams all over and begin to join ministries together. Ministries that would not really normally work together begin to work together. So when I share with you the power of vision and the warfare tool that vision is, because what vision does is unite a front against the enemy. Once we found out the mind of God and begin to move on it by faith, the devil had to just stand there and take it. There was nothing he could do. The only thing he did do, which he didn't manage to accomplish, he tried to bring strife against the brethren, and it did shake a lot of us. I can't hide that from you either. But he had to bring it inside because there was nothing he could do as far as the brethren standing together by faith and prayer. That vision just totally changed the landscape of that particular area in Northern Virginia. So anyway, I hope that you will be encouraged as we've been sharing these spiritual warfare points. And even though, yeah, it's a spiritual warfare course, they're very basic to just spiritual life in general. So I hope you won't just see it as a beating up on demons course. And I'm not teaching it that way. I'm teaching it really more how you live. However, I will be getting more into direct demonic activity in 104. 104 really is what those of you who look at spiritual warfare is what you've been waiting for. Because now I'm going to use application, and you're going to see where we're going to go. And I'm going to deal with primarily 4 different aspects that the enemy uses against society. Accusation, strongholds, imaginations, and intimidations. These are the things that Satan can control neighborhoods, communities, states, nations with, countries, continents. And when we begin to engage in spiritual warfare, God begins to give us the grace, and we begin to pull down these strongholds and destroy these rebellious imaginations and break the spirit of fear and intimidation. I want you to know that this is real. And I'm glad that God has given me this opportunity to share the spiritual warfare series with you, 101, 102, and 103. So looking forward to to teaching the next section. God bless you. Pray for me and Sultana and I. We need your prayer. And stand with us for the dethroning of ISIS. They will be dethroned. God bless you, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.